I'm Abe, and today I'm going to show you how to make these mesmerizing morphing videos using ComfyUI. These are really cool animations, and you can create some hypnotic loops where one image morphs into another. I get really excited about how creative you can get with these, but sometimes ComfyUI workflows can be a little intimidating. So today, I'll keep it simple. I'll share a plug-and-play workflow that can take 4 pictures and seamlessly blend them together in a captivating loop. Imagine using this for your artwork, videos, reels, intros, or just for fun. There's a special workflow involved, but it's nothing crazy. I'll break it down step by step so you can follow along easily. I'll show you where to get the workflow and how to install all the models and checkpoints that you're going to need. We'll generate a basic morphing image, and then I'll show you how to supercharge that to generate cool video concepts from basic text prompts. By the end of this video, you'll be able to generate your own mind-bending loops and be able to build on top of the workflow that I share. Plus, you'll pick up on some tips and tricks that I'll share along the way. All right, enough chit-chat. Let's get down to business. We're going to dive right in and start generating some morphing masterpieces. First, we're going to go to Civit AI and download the JSON file for the workflow. A huge shout out to IPIV who created and shared this workflow. Once we extract this, it'll give us this JSON file. So then go ahead and go to your ComfyUI, drag and drop your JSON file, and the workflow is now loaded. Chances are, as soon as you load this, you'll see a whole bunch of missing nodes. And if you run into that, you can just go into the manager, install missing custom nodes, install whatever's missing, and then restart ComfyUI, which will then fix those missing node issues. Once you fix the missing nodes, you'll also need to download all the models. This workflow is great because it has all the links built in. I'll also add these links in the description just to make things easier. Once you have all your models downloaded, go ahead and open the ComfyUI folder. And now we're going to start putting these models in the right place. Before we do anything else, let's take a quick look at what's going on here. So we have a settings module at the bottom left, where we're pulling in a LoRa for Animate LCM. We're loading in a checkpoint. You can load any Stable Diffusion 1.5 checkpoint here. And then we're loading in a way. There's prompt fields here for your checkpoint, but in this model, you won't really need prompts. And then we're having a latent image. You can, of course, go ahead and change this, but just keep in mind that because this is Stable Diffusion 1.5, you want to limit your maximum resolution to 512. Our batch size is 96, which means there's 96 frames that we'll be generating. On the left, this is where we're loading in the AnimateDiff model. You can change the motion scale here. If you go with a higher number, you'll get more motion, but it can get a little finicky. And then you have some context options here. We have our IP adapters, which will require a couple of clip vision models. And then we have our control net at the bottom. We're using the QR code control net. We're also loading in a video mask here. And the control net mask that we're feeding in looks kind of like this. And so you'll see that the final image that's generated sort of has this pattern with the morphing. You can also experiment with different masks that I'll share later in the video. For input, we're going to load in 4 images here. And it's going to take the control net and the IP adapters and feed it into the K-sampler. The K-sampler will then generate a video that we're going to combine, and that's going to be our original preview. That K-sampler then feeds into another sampler, which will upscale the video by a factor of 1.5. And then we're also doing some more upscaling with the model and frame interpolations. So we have our workflow set up and all the models loaded. Now let's take it for a spin. So I'm going to update 4 images. As you can see, they kind of have a similar theme to them, which would make sense for a morphing video. I should also mention that we're feeding in a video mask for the control net, so I've tried to give it the best chance of success here. I'll also show you how to use different motion animations and masks that might suit your pattern a little bit better that I'll share later in the video. So I've gone ahead and loaded the images. I want to generate a preview. But before we go ahead and run this, I'm going to do a couple of things. As I mentioned earlier, there's a bunch of upscale nodes here that will take a lot of time to run. For all of my upscale nodes, I will disable them by selecting them all and pressing Ctrl M. So this should mute all of the nodes. I'm also going to do this with my second sampler code and upscale. And then now I can hit run, and I'll walk you through what it's doing as it's running it. Loading the checkpoints for the AnimateDiff as well as for the model. It's generating a control net. So you can see it's moving along left to right here. It's creating a mask. It's loading in the IP adapters, and it's going to process all 4 IP adapters. All of this feeds into a sampler, which is using LCM with 11 steps. Each of those steps roughly takes 40 seconds, so I'm expecting it to finish in 5 minutes. It's going to take a lot longer to run for the upscaled models. And so it's important that I have something I like first before I upscale it. And that is then feeding into a decode module that generates our frames that we can then combine with the video combine. The frame rate is 12, which is half of what you would see in a typical television or movie. And so you can play with this and increase this to 24. Just note that you'll get a smaller animation. Once we have a preview that we like, we will then upscale that image either through the upscaler or through an upscale model, and we will run frame interpolations. And at the end of that, we'll have both an upscaled and an interpolated image. Okay, we can see that it's done, and we have a preview saved here. You can see how this mask comes into play. If I like the result, I can enable the nodes that we disabled in the first step and then upscale the image and get something with frame interpolation. It is working as expected, but also it's not quite what I wanted. Getting to a first preview is the tough part. So how do we supercharge this so that we don't have to manually feed in each image and wait for the result? So let's work on changing this flow to do that. So what I want to be able to do is generate 4 images from text, feed it into this flow, and then to be able to generate a video preview based on those 4 images. Okay, let's get started. So the first thing I want to do is load a new checkpoint that will let me control if I want to use maybe a SDXL checkpoint to generate the image, followed by a Stable Diffusion 1.5 checkpoint to generate the animation. In my case, I'm going to stick with a Stable Diffusion 1.5, but you can choose to use a different type of model if you want. I'm going to generate a couple of text prompts. And here's the trick. For the latent image, I'm going to stick with my 9:16 ratio, but I'll generate a batch of 4 images. I'm actually going to use an advanced sampler here. The output of this, we will decode it, save the images. I'm going to call this Morpheus. Now I'm going to give it a prompt just to kind of show you how we're going to work with those batches. And of course, we want to keep this family friendly. We're going to disable the animation flow just with closing out a checkpoint here. If we run that, we're going to get a whole bunch of errors here, but that's fine. Let's say I'm happy with these and I want a morphing flow with these 4 images. Instead of feeding in each image here, I'll feed in my own image. And so to do that, I'm going to first break this batch up. I'm going to use the image from batch module, which uses a batch index of 0 and lets me extract each individual or multiple sets of images. Reroute this just to keep it a little cleaner. And we're going to make 4 instances of this. We're going to extract the first, which is index 0, the second, third, and the fourth, and we will feed it into the IP adapters. We now have our text to image, which will generate a set of images. As you can see, all 4 of these images are fairly similar. That's because the batch uses the same seed, and so we'll change that to mix it up a little bit. So we're going to change the seed behavior for the Latin batch, and we're going to make it random. If I run this again, I'll get a different set of images. Okay, yeah, this is pretty cool. I think this would make a pretty cool Morph. Maybe I also want to use a different type of pattern. For something like this, a circular pattern may or may not make the most sense. So I can look at some more patterns here. And I think I like this one. You might run into the issue with the URL here. And the best way to accommodate that is to copy the video address and paste that into the load video node. And so I'll go ahead and change the video path. I left a link to these video masks in the description below. Enable our checkpoint again. and run the flow. I'll also share this modified workflow in the description so that you can use it to generate animations with just text prompts. This is really powerful because I can load in all of my prompts from an external text file and generate a small video for each of them. If you want to see how to do this, I have a separate tutorial that shows you how to generate a batch of images from external text prompts. And oh my god, this is looking amazing already. Okay, so I can go ahead and start to upscale this. To do this, I've unmuted my second K-sampler node. This is going to take the images from the first model, upscale it by 1.5, feed it into a second K-sampler, and then that is eventually going to feed it into an upscaled model. Okay, now we can see that it's finished generating an upscaled version. If we compare the sizes, you'll see that this is a smaller size. Now we have a much larger animation. Now that that's done, I'm going to queue it to the upscale with model. Once that's done, I can feed it into the frame interpolation models, which will help smoothen out the video and add 24 frames instead of just 12. For the purposes of this video, I'm not going to run the interpolation. We should still be able to get an upscaled video. Okay, so there you have it. You should now be able to generate your own morphing masterpieces. If this video helped you, I'd really appreciate it if you hit the like button and subscribe for more ComfyUI tips and tricks. Thanks for watching. See you in the next one. This is pretty cool. Fade out.